Welcome to another episode of Blank Canvas by Plinko Solutions, a project brought to you around AI and accessibility. Listen, today's an interesting one. I have a good friend of mine, peer/mentor, as you'd say, that asked me this question. And I was like, you know what? I've been trying to think about it. I've done a lot of writing behind it, but I wanted to hear how it sounds. So the question is basically, if you have $1 billion on the line and had to show a CFO the value of getting your service in a 30-second pitch, what would that pitch be? CFO, not CTO, director, purely financial. Now, this is an exercise that is a really good one, especially for businesses that are focused on creating revenue and solving bottom line questions, such as, distribution, speed to lead, stuff like that. Basically, how many people are aware of what you're selling? Because if you sell, 10,000 people $1 worth of something, right? That's 10,000. Principle behind that is no matter how many people, or no matter there's a few kind of gears you can kind of move within a business, right? There's the product, the engineering, then there's the marketing and the actual distribution, the sales, right? How many people are actually in front of it? Then how do people use it? And then there's everything adjacent to that in terms of customer success and product development and all those fancy things. For today, we're focused on the CFO side of things. So what is a CFO? Chief Financial Officer, right? Someone who purely looks at the business by numbers on the books, right? They're pretty much removed from the social science of things. Again, that comes with its pros and cons. It's just the lens. We're not questioning kind of the, the intent, the motivation behind it. It's more so, how do we position this thing so that the math adds up and that it works? Before diving into this whole CFO draw of things, I wanted to take you guys through something. So this here, we're ideating a whole bunch, but I wanted to walk you guys through something that's really important. So what is productionizing distribution? The best way to kind of describe it is to see it in action. So Disney production map. They have a giant kind of graph, image of sorts that you get to see. There it is. This is the good old one. So I remember seeing this for the first time and it blew my mind. When I first looked this up, it changed the way I saw a lot of media, right? Because you think about an ecosystem when it comes to software, you usually think about continued use, right? People are using it and they're pretty much never putting it down. When it comes to consumable things like media, right? There's something about the nature of media that pulls you back into it. When I talk about media, I'm talking about television, talking about music, right? Talking about merchandise, publications, books, comic books, magazines, and then amusement parks like Disneyland, right? Collectibles like comic strips, and then everything in between that, right? So between TV and music, you have record materials, tunes and talent. You have music development that gets published between television to music, right? Music also helps kick off new films. It also feeds tunes and talents back into the core piece of this whole distribution kind of factory of sorts, the talent studio, right? Everything kind of comes back to it. So you'll see that the talent studio puts out these films. The films are then used to pay off the cost of distribution within television, right? So when a film grosses 30 million, they then spend a little bit of that money with production or distribution networks, right? Television. Those televisions, networks, they also create commercials and business films, right? Those business films come from descriptions of places that adults can go to. So, an example of that, this will make life a lot easier. There you go. So, you'll see from television, the business films come back to Disneyland, those commercials, right? I mean, watching Disney Channel on television, they used to advertise Disneyland. Makes the same sense with theatrical studios plugging in movies, right? Again, jumping around a bit, back to those films, that also promotes Disneyland, because when you go to Disneyland, what do you see? The film, the sets, the things in action, right? There's repurposing a lot of the studio. That then also comes back to merchandise listing, right? Licensing rather. There's a national market because the user is now actually part of this whole system. So because of that, they plug in merchandise, right? You can also buy it, represent it, show the network, show the ecosystem, show the people that you're part of this world, this universe, right? That then turns people that are users into people that go to Disneyland, that then promote the parks and feed the confectionaries, which is like items and things like that, little candies, right? That then comes and funnels through a full Disney network, right? That then, following back up here with music, think about the source of ideas for albums. Where does that come from? The writers, the people that are actually creating the stories, providing article material, also plugging back into the films, the bigger pieces of media. The comic strips that feed material back for reprints and provide article material, plug Disneyland. This here, what you've noticed, is a distribution network. Being able to create something like this as a business at this scale is quite difficult to do off rip, right? Truthfully, what you need to do is figure out the order of media that you create that comes most natural to you in a creative fashion so that you can produce something like this for yourself, right? In my coin and my side of the world, that's building this sort of Plinko universe. The thing is, that's a plan. This is a goal that happens over the span of years, not months, not weeks, years. So the only way that it happens, though, is by planting the seed within media and marketing. That's why it's a good idea to kind of productionize this, right? So being able to, for example, create the systems that support the television and the music and the publications and Disneyland and merchandising. Again, it doesn't have to always look like this. There's many ways that a distribution network shows up. This is just the best way of seeing it, right? That's productionizing distribution. Now, back to that question, right? That's kind of the rest of the video. If you have $1 billion on the line and you have to show a CFO the value of getting your service in a 30-second pitch, what would that pitch be? And again, we're talking purely financial. So all of this marketing stuff, put that to the side. What does a CFO actually care about? With Plinko Solutions, we recover profit that's currently trapped in revenue operations, slow lead response, inconsistent follow-up, messy CRM hygiene, and reporting, right? Everything that bloats. In the first 30 days, we remove the 3 to 5 biggest leakage points and install a CFO-grade dashboard that proves the impact in dollars. Cycle time reduced, hours removed, and revenue captured. Not a big fan of this one. That 30-second pitch sounds like a lot of new terms that aren't at a 10th grade reading level, right? So what is it that we really focus on, right? Instead of talking about digital transformation, talk about leverage. Because CFOs don't wake up worried about software, how things work, they wake up thinking about money leaking out of revenue engines, right? What's keeping a business afloat? Headcount getting added to cover talent and process debt, right? Keeping people engaged with what they have to do. Forecast getting warped because the underlying data is fiction, right? They're trying to kind of monitor and track how things are going, yet the story changes every day. The risk that come with that in terms of missed follow-ups and inconsistent process, no audit trails, not being able to control what's happening. So the first leak that I'd like to talk about here is speed to lead. What is speed to lead? Speed to lead is the direct measurement between the moment somebody finds out about you on the distribution network, which is why I brought that up, and the speed and velocity in which they become a paying customer/client, right? This happens in seconds, minutes, and most businesses capitalize on, again, the power of a distribution network, which accelerates that. And other mechanisms that also accelerate that. What are those mechanisms? One of the mechanisms is probability, right? What are the actual probable in-between moments that increase their likelihood to continue engaging with you and learning about you, even subconsciously, right? The piece behind that is the average response time for most businesses, most people, is measured in dozens of hours, not minutes. So speed isn't a nice to have, it's a probability lever. A well-cited lead response management study, often within MIT, you'll find that the odds of contacting a lead drop dramatically after the first few minutes. So somebody finding out about you, and then 30 minutes later actually becoming a paying customer versus 5 minutes is the difference between a business that actually gets the lead versus one that doesn't. So you already pay for the lead, right? Through advertising, events, partnerships, other parts of the distribution network. A slow response time becomes wasteful. Waste shows up in higher cost of acquisition, right? So that's CAC, lower conversion, so people actually buying, longer cycle time, so the weeks it takes for somebody to actually engage with you, and then more headcount pressure, the amount of people responsible for accelerating that versus the systems and the mechanisms. The second mechanism is data, right? So bad data creates fake confidence. This one is tough because it hides behind a dashboard, it hides behind a UI usually, right? So the idea is that bad data doesn't just break reporting, it breaks decision making. There's a lot of different studies. Especially from Gartner, that go even more CFO direct. Poor data quality cost organizations $12.9 million a year on average, right? So that's Gartner and Harvard research there. What that means is if the forecast is wrong, hiring plan gets weird. If pipeline coverage looks healthy, cash can still come in late. Stages, the definitions, they drift, they change. Conversion rates don't really make sense. Reps don't trust the CRM, they stop updating it. Their lie becomes permanent, becomes apparent, right? It just doesn't make sense. This third mechanism is manual work disguised as process. This is the one that kills margins quietly. Every minute a rep stops doing admin work is a minute they're not responding, not following up, not qualifying, not progressing deals, and not closing. The ugly part is companies respond to this by putting more pressure on the people, right? As part of the training, which is not how you move growth. Growth demands systems, meaning processes that you don't have to put a person behind, but it carries their share of the load. So the real ROI in that case isn't that automation is cool, but it's how many salaries are about to add to cover problems that we could remove instead, and then pay those people to do better work, right? More orchestration, more creative directive, more beyond just the implementation layer, right? And that's a conversation to have, but watching the clock and sticking to the tangents. What we actually sell behind Plinko Solutions is we sell leakage reduction with measurement, not workflows, not another AI agentic solution, not some, make.com, no code automation stuff. For a CFO is buying a measurable financial outcome by working with us, a control system that sustains it, and a reporting layer that makes it undeniable because nothing falls through the cracks. That's the service. It's full-scale sales that helps within that first 30 days. And the part that makes that believable is truthfully is more data by doing it more often. I've serviced over 120 different contracts across a dozen different industries at this, say a handful of industries, real estate, property management mostly, especially on the tax side as well. Mostly on the financial side. So speaking the CFO language is something I'm actively practicing doing more within the distribution network. So if you're following along with this, much gratitude. Catch you in the next one.